welcome to another episode of Mad Bros Media Zoom podcast. I'm here today with legendary martial artist, Mr. Richard Norton. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm really good, lads. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. And one of the big questions we ask all of our guests, how are you and your family been holding up during the pandemic?
Well, I want to preface my answer by first of all saying that, well, actually, both of us totally understand how much of an impact it's had on friends with businesses, with martial arts schools, with restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's just got to have been pretty much unbearable with what they've got to go through. But if you're asking me personally, I haven't had a bad time at all. You know, my life has been a lot of traveling and always in some different country doing something, whether it's on movie sets or whatever. And I haven't actually minded the whole idea of lockdown in the sense that it's forced me to just be at home, appreciate being at home, appreciate spending time with my wife, which luckily we get on so well after 35 years. And it's just a chance for me. You know, I've just done so much research and reading and catching up on stuff that I normally in my busy life wouldn't give myself enough time to do. You know, I keep a lot of notes on training from years ago and everything, and just a chance to go back and sort of revisit whether it's traditional martial art aspects of what I used to do and don't do as much of anymore, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've just really enjoyed, you know, that whole part of it and creating a bit of a balance. I've realized how good it is to actually not have 5 things you need to do every day, that it's okay to just sit and watch Netflix and watch Schitt's Creek or whatever. You know, we love that show. But it's almost, you know, it's sort of stuff that doesn't take a lot of sort of cerebral sort of work and thought and everything. And I just found it enjoyable. Now, would I want it to go on? No, you know, especially when the gyms were shut and all of that, because that's always pretty much of my daily life. But again, I often say to people, look, I refuse to get into a negative mindset over something that I can't change. Like, it doesn't matter how angry I get about government, about masks, about social distancing, my attitude to it is not going to change what is. And one needs to really just look at the actual COVID itself as the causation of everything. And, you know, governments and officials just have to do what they believe is the best thing to try and curb it. And I understand that. And so I just say, just get on with it, you know, just go along for the ride, do what you need to do as a citizen that's got concern for your family and friends and people in the supermarket or whatever, and just do the right thing. Even if you have some sort of antagonism toward the whole thing, just do the right thing, do a mask, you know, it's here to stay. We will figure out ways to live with it, same ways we did with a whole lot of different pandemics of different nature throughout history. And vaccinations, I'm sure, will have an effect, you know, but again, just get on with it. That's my advice, you know.
Yeah.
Because otherwise all you're doing is walking around in just this angry kind of mindset about masks and everything else. And I just think you're the one that's going to suffer more as a result of that, you know.
Now, earlier this year, you spoke on the longevity of martial arts. Do you feel that sometimes there's like expectation in the field because you see people like Sammo and Jackie Chan, those guys are older and they're still doing like big fight scenes and stuff like that?
Well, I'm not so much sure that it's an expectation as much as a desire to see these people still, you know, exhibit their martial arts. Usually the ones that would expect the older ones to do it are the young ones that don't know what it's like to be 70 years of age. You know, for me, it's really, it's up to people like me, if I'm sort of casting a role, is to say, look, I need this role to be in line with my age, you know, and my physical abilities. You know, I have a saying that I don't care what you think, age alone will dictate that you change the way you perform your martial arts. I mean, it's just, it's a natural, it's the truth that I wouldn't at 70 be kicking as high as I used to or punching as hard as I used to. But what I do know is I can do the best I can do at my age. And I think with age comes a lot of wisdom. So I would hope that I'm smart enough to know what I can do and can't do anymore. You know, I got a lot of injuries. We're talking about injuries before we started this, and my shoulders, you know, my right shoulder particularly, it's just bone on bone. I didn't realize in the 90s when I was doing the Hong Kong movies with Jackie and Sammo that I was doing a lot of damage, usually from things like crashing down on concrete floors or into concrete walls after getting punched. You got to hit it like a bag of shit. You know, you can't break, fall, or do anything like that. And apparently I stripped a lot of cartilage off the bone. And the doctor told me even a couple of falls like that would do it, but I've literally done it hundreds of times, particularly over there. You know, so there's been, you know, the injuries and everything now make me think about what I can do physically, you know. It doesn't mean I'm going to put the brakes on. I'm still going to try and do the absolute best that I'm capable of, but I myself are totally aware of the limitations I have with all the training I've done, the effect it's had on my body. You know, we get a certain amount of arthritis in different joints. I mean, that's again, just a natural sort of result of what we've done, punishing our bodies. I don't want to say punishing, but in a way, a lot of the wrong things we did earlier along in, you know, in our years, again, thinking we're indestructible. But I think you look at Sammo, God, they're role models, mate. I mean, I look at Sammo Hong and the fact that he's still doing what he's doing, albeit I sort of see a Sammo that's kind of a little more restrained, you know, in the physicality of what he does. But the smart thing is that he's playing characters and doing fight scenes that suit his age. So I like that younger people expect us to all do the same thing. I would say I've got news for you. Wait another 20 years and let me know how you feel. But, you know, good luck. You know, I did a film with Liam Neeson earlier in the year called Blacklight. It hasn't come out yet. Did the fight coordinating, trained Liam, you know, for fight scenes and choreographed them. And Liam's biggest concern was coming into this that he was being asked to play roles that really somebody 20 years younger should be doing. Liam's 68 years of age, had a lot of experiences, you know, in action films, but he was a little concerned that he'd be asked to do choreography that really didn't suit his age. And the fact that I was doing the choreography and training him and that I'm 2 or 3 years older than Liam gave him a lot of comfort. That the fact that I could show him exactly with speed and power what I was asking him to do, and I was 2 years older, then made him comfortable. It sort of gave him a license that somebody at his age could be punching and kicking the way I was asking him to do, if that makes sense, you know. You know, a lot of what people don't realize, by the way, with not just older actors, younger actors, is there's always the stunt double. You know, the camera and film is a matter of illusion. It's not everything you see is actually happening. And the relief for us is that you could put a stunt double back on to do a jumping, spinning heel kick, and hopefully audiences think it's still us doing it, when really we're sitting on a chair having a coffee and saying, fuck, I look good now doing that. You know, but I love seeing, you know, some of the old actors still out there doing their thing, you know, and again, they're just doing it to the best of your ability. What else can you do? People always, you know, it's got the funny age now where, you know, I look at people like Scott Adkins and Michael J. White. I mean, they're just unbelievable. You know, look at Scott, the athleticism. I would never have had that athleticism. Well, I shouldn't say I wouldn't have, you know, and I did a podcast with Scott and we're talking about that. And I said, look, when I look at the films I did in the 80s and the sort of action, it's kind of funny now, you know, not all of it, but the level these guys have taken to. But as I said, we just did what you did back in the 80s and 90s, you know, with crescent kicks and, you know, stuff that we used to see Chuck Norris doing or whoever doing. It's just evolved, and thank God it has evolved. I mean, guys like Scott and Michael just looked at that stuff. They took lessons from it and they said, oh, but we can add this and this and this. You look at some of these tricksters in extreme martial artists and some of the athleticism they show in the acrobatics is just jaw-dropping, and I'm thankful for that. And, you know, I hope people don't always get to comparing without realizing that, again, what you did back then was the best that you believed you could do, you know? And to sort of compare what we did then with what they're doing now just doesn't make sense to me. You know, it's like somebody asked me once, oh, could Chuck Norris, he wouldn't be able to beat a Conor McGregor. And I'm like, well, that's a ludicrous comparison, considering Chuck was a world champion, you know, at his point karate for the time he did it. And for anybody that becomes the best in the world at what is being done at that particular stage deserves to be complimented, you know. And I always say that I believe that Chuck Norris born 30 years later would be a Conor McGregor, meaning it's the heart and it's the desire and the intent of people like Chuck or Benny Urquidez or people like that made them the champions they were then, and I believe it made it the champions they are now. The difference is we just have far more access to knowledge today through internet with the technology that enables people to be the absolute best they can be. And like, to finish it off, it's like I say to people, when I started training in karate and judo in the 60s, we didn't even have video machines, let alone DVDs, and then online and internet, and the ability to access every master in the world that's the best of what they do and learn from them. We could only learn what our instructor would teach us, when he wanted to teach us, and in the order he wanted to teach us. And when you look at film, it's kind of like that. People have role models through the roof now that exhibit such amazing sort of excellence in what they do, that it gives the opportunity for all these young kids to really just start to excel, you know. So a long-winded answer, but I hope that made sense.
No, that's totally fine. It's really your storytelling and your answers are very enjoyable. But so you study. I watched some of your other stuff too. So just to recap, you had studied when you started at 10. You did judo, and so that was probably around 1960s. And you said that you used saw magazines and stuff. Like you didn't have anything else to only like you just said, like your instructor told you what was, that's all you could learn. But what was your first like experience, or like maybe seeing on film? Was it like Bruce Lee, or what was your first experience on film of seeing martial arts?
No, it would have been way before that, with a lot of the, you know, the Chinese kung fu movies that preceded Bruce. Now, admittedly, my whole interest was more in the Japanese arts. You know, I wasn't Chinese stylist per se, but I definitely had an interest in watching some of the, you know, they did a lot of wire work even way back then in those films, you know, which tended to sort of get the imagination going as to what was possible physically. And that was very much instrumental in my interest in exploring different aspects of the martial arts. And of course, you know, like everybody, we're influenced by Bruce Lee. You know, there's just so many aspects of what he did, especially in hindsight. You look back and you realize that he really was one of the originators of MMA, meaning mixing martial arts. You know, to see somebody doing arm bars against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you know, in one of the films, or the way he sparred with Chuck. The idea of mixing arts, which, by the way, just wasn't really done when I started. You know, if you did Shotokan, that's all you did. If you did Goju, that's all you did. You didn't change the way you blocked the strike. Whereas somebody like Bruce was smart enough to realize there were positive aspects to so many of the different arts. And he would pick out what he believed would work and make him individually a better martial artist. So, you know, to be influenced by people like Bruce, you know, I mean, God, I'm just one of many that was influenced. You know, even the way he would do his fight scenes. I often talk with fight choreography about intent, meaning people can learn choreography in a movie and go through the moves, but I'll look at it and I'll often say, but I don't believe it. I don't believe what you're doing. And if you look at Bruce's intent, I mean, he was the one that made that punch looked like it lasted 3 seconds longer. You know, this whole intensity. So even though he would sometimes throw a singular kick or a hook kick or whatever, or one punch, you were like, oh shit, you know? And that's what I call intent. You know, you believe the intent he's putting in the fight. So I particularly learned a lot from that, you know, that it was more about the intent than even the type of technique was thrown, you know. So yeah, no, I was influenced by Bruce, and of course later on, you know, Chuck being one of the first Westerns to really start doing a lot of martial arts movies. And man, hats off to all those gentlemen for just paving the way for others to believe that it's possible for them too.
Yeah, I think Chuck was one of the first Westerners, but I think that you, in my opinion, is one of the first men to bring like charm and charisma. I mean, I maybe after Bruce Lee a little bit, but I think you brought a lot of charm and charisma to martial arts. And you know, you're like a tall, striking, you know, handsome man. I don't know. Before that, I can't think of another guy that was in martial arts before that.
You know,
And you came in the '80s and stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you. Look, you know, it was a fun journey. You know, you just do what you do. As I said, this is why, you know, I what can I say? You know, it was a little gripe I have when people start comparing. Well, he's not as good as so and so, and he's not as good as that. You know, I want people to realize that. You imagine you're a martial artist from a suburb of Melbourne in Croydon. You grew up doing martial arts. You love doing it. You go to the States. You get an opportunity to actually be the nemesis to somebody like a Chuck Norris. Now, even if you're not the best that could have been chosen, do you think that you, given that chance, would say, no, I'm not really good enough, you should use somebody else? Meaning, you grow with that opportunity, and all you do is the best you can do. You know, and I would never, ever say that I have better abilities than anybody. I'm just doing the best that I can do. Is it less than so many? Of course it is. Is it better than some? Yes, it is. But, you know, there's always a problem when you compare that. You're either going to get an ego because you think you're better than, or you're going to feel a little depressed because you don't think you're up to scratch. And you just do what you do. And, you know, I look back at the 80s and I think what an incredible journey and what a fun time that was. Working with some amazing martial artists like Chuck, like Sammo, like Jackie Chan. What an incredible experience. And does it matter that I wasn't the best that they could choose? No. And would I, having known that now, say no to that opportunity? Absolutely not. I don't believe anybody else would. So, man, I appreciate the compliments. And as I said, we did what we did back at that time, and everything's evolved. And again, thank God it has, you know.
Do you, on some of your movies, I remember you saying the catchphrase painful. I was wondering if that was ad-libbed or was that scripted, or where did that come about?
No, you know, it's funny. I try and remember that. I think that probably came from Sammo, you know, because when I did that first movie, Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Stars in Hong Kong, they don't even have sync sound. Like none of the sound is recorded on set. So it's all, you know, dubbed in post-production. And so what people like Sammo or Jackie would do, they would just basically give you an English equivalent of some sort, something to say that would last as long as what they believe the Cantonese or Mandarin subtext would be, you know? And I'm pretty sure that's from Sammo. I can't imagine that I would have just said that, but it became just very, very funny, you know, because I'm punching him, you know, I get painful. And eventually, you know, asking him again, painful. He says, no, I can't feel anything because my body's all numb. And it's just their off the world humor. And it became a bit of a catchphrase that I got to use a few times later, you know, in the thing. But yeah.
And it must have been dubbed in different English languages, because one of them we saw, it says, my whole ass is numb. That's what Sammo would reply to you.
Yeah.
I can't feel a thing.
No, obviously, I've heard myself speaking so many different languages in those movies, which is very funny.
Now, I heard a rumor too. Did you lose 18 pounds because of how rigorous that fight scene was with Sammo Hung?
Yeah, I did. And I was much lighter than I am now. You know, it's probably about, I don't know, 175, might have been 180. And over the course of 2.5 weeks, I lost nearly 18 pounds because we're in a studio in the Shaw Brothers lot. There's no air conditioning. It was literally about 110 degrees in the studio. And you're fighting, and I kid you not, and I've said this a lot and you would have heard, but it's the truth that we're on the set 18 hours a day, 7 days a week when you do the fight stuff. And you find a little corner to try and get a couple of minutes sleep in between setups and doing the fight, and it's full on. I mean, you know, when you do those fights, it's not just this. Again, you talk about intent. They were very much about putting as much power and intent, even if it meant slowing the choreography down a little bit, and then they would undercrank the camera back in those days and speed it up in camera, you know. And you know, normally with film you shoot 24 frames a second, and they'd shoot maybe 22, sometimes 21 frames, which is why you see a lot of it looks a little choppy. But the power and intent you put into it is absolutely exhausting. And yes, I lost about 18 pounds in weight. Now, you know, thankfully I was always prided myself in being in really good shape going into those movies. And I also realized that you had to be, if you weren't in shape when you went into one of those movies, you just weren't going to last, you know. So I would train very hard. I didn't know on the first one that that's what it involved, by the way. I remember going over in the plane thinking, oh, it'll be 12-hour days, you know, and I'll get to do this and get to do that. Well, the rude awakening was, no, you get to do only what they want you to do, the choreography with the Chinese coordinators, whether it's Sammo or Jackie or whoever else. And you would do it as many times as they wanted you to do it till they were happy with the take. And their level of excellence out of what they required was something that you couldn't even perceive. Like I kept thinking, what else can I do? Okay, one more. Okay, one more. Though I was told that there was a director around the Bruce Lee time that was renowned for doing a minimum of 30 takes per setup. And so every director after him sort of thought that to be taken seriously as a director, they would also have to do that many, even if you got a good take within the first 3, 4, 5 takes, you know. So it was a grueling session, and the contact was you know, excessive to say the least in the body, some of it to the face as well. So again, it was full on. So I look back and say, no wonder I lost 18 pounds, probably out of fear of being able to last through the whole thing.
But I think, yeah, it's still to this day, I think it still stands the test of time as one of the most, you know, greatest fight scenes on film ever, I think, though.
I know it's like one of the most viewed on YouTube.
Yeah, and you know what? Once again, you know, I'm just a pawn in that whole process, and the world of Sammo Hung. Sammo is still, for me, the most talented action director, creative choreographer that I've ever worked with, you know, and that's him. And I was also very thankful that Sammo, which was unusual, they actually kind of asked me what I do best, as it were, you know, because a lot of the choreography, being Chinese in nature, is very foreign to me, you know. So to ask me to do a whole Wing Chun set would be ridiculous. So he was kind enough to sort of ask kind of what my style was, and then cater the choreography around that. But having said that, it's still out of the head of Sammo and the different choreographies, you know, the result and what you see. And man, just, you know, again, I can't tell you how fortunate I know now, looking back, that I had a chance to work with what I always call the maestro of action movies, as in a Chuck Norris and Sammo Hung and Jackie Chan, you know, because, you know, the thing is, when you do it, people often say, oh, what did you think the first time you're going to work with Jackie Chan? And I said, well, you don't think anything, it's a job. You go, oh, yeah, I'm going to get paid for another 6 weeks. It's only 20 years later when you talk to different people that love that era and you see their eyes light up when you tell them stories about being on the set, that you go, you know what, that was an amazing experience. And again, it makes you realize how fortunate you were to have been a part of that 80s, 90s era of that kind of filmmaking.
So you have an really impressive resume of people that you have done bodyguard service for. Do you have any like funny stories from the road, or like any kind of like maybe something crazy happened on the road?
Oh man, yes. Lots of stories. Look, you know, again, I think about, you know, I started doing bodyguard work in 1973 with the Rolling Stones, and you know, you can imagine what an introduction to the world of rock and roll.
I mean,
working with the Stones. And you know, I used to train Mick Jagger at 4 o'clock in the morning, throwing karate punches. He was interested in all that and fitness. And, you know, what an incredible experience that was. Of course, you know, there were lots of instances that happened on the road, some in a violent sort of nature. But not as much as one would think. But I don't often like to talk about the actual physical stuff because I don't like to glorify it, because
Yeah.
it makes a good
Yeah.
story. But, it's unfortunate in any way you look at it. But it's, there's funny stories, like one quick one. We're in a hotel in Sydney, and we had the whole top floor with the band, and there happened to be a flower convention, in the hotel at the same time. And as a result of having the top floor, myself and another gentleman, Bob Jones, we would be outside the elevator. And if anyone came up to the top floor, we would just say, look, I'm sorry, this is closed floor, and send them back down to the bottom, because it was closed off for the Stones entourage. And anyway, one day they came up and the door opens and there's probably 5 people, a couple of ladies with hair up to the nines, all dressed with all their furs and everything else, and a couple of guys. And, we said, look, sorry, this is a closed floor. And one of the guys had been kind of drinking, a bit reasonably solid sort of guy in a suit, and he refused and said he was coming out no matter what we said. And Stewie, a friend of ours, we had an extra guy working with us, ended up, because the guy was quite violent, he popped him, and sent him back into the elevator. And we see the doors close and we hear it go, and we could hear this rumbling. And apparently the guy had just started banging on the side of the elevator, and it ended up getting stuck, It had hardly left our floor level, so it's all stuck. They must have been there for an hour and a half or something before somebody came to let them out. And it was mayhem in the elevator. So you got to imagine this image of Keith Richards, Mick at some stage, Bobby Keys, who was an early keyboard saxophone player at that time. Sorry, what was he? Yeah, saxophone player, Bobby Keys. Anyway, they were all outside the elevator and just listening to this stuff going on. And it got to a stage where you could hear the people in the elevator almost just feeling like they're going to pass out. They all believe they're running out of oxygen and everything else, which they weren't. And it was, I think it was Keith that came to the door, and he knocks on the door and says, everybody, can you hear me? And they, yes, we can hear you. He said, look, I need everybody to just settle down, just take a step back and listen to me. Yes, we can hear whatever you get to say. I just wanted everybody to know we're going to bed now. Silence. Eventually, the elevator guys came and the doors opened. They came out and it all got quietened down, because the boys gave them signed autographs and everything like that. But it probably doesn't sound as funny as the time. I still have a fond memory of all that sort of stuff. And, the other thing we'd have to do is sometimes in different hotels, we'd have a party and everything. And Bob and I would go down to the local disco, that really dates me, doesn't it, when I'm talking discotheques, but we would go down and sort of chat to a lot of the local ladies. Yes, there's a party up, and the boys would love to have you come up to the room. Of course, when they would come up and the door would open, they'd often be with even husbands. One lady was with her husband, and we said, I'm sorry, it's ladies only, we're not allowing any males in. And he would have a fit and we'd shove him back in the elevator. I always say the funny thing is the wife still often went off into the party and sent the boyfriend or the husband down below to wait for them. But they were funny antics that went on.
I mean, that must have been incredible. I mean, because like you said, like you were introduced to that world, and you said 73, so you're about what, 22, 23, and it's like
23 years of
hanging
age.
out with, I mean, of course protecting them, but hanging out with the Rolling Stones. I mean, man, and first movie was, you said your first movie was with because your first movie was Octagon, correct? That was with
1979. That was, yeah.
And then with Chuck Norris, I mean, one of the biggest martial arts stars in the world, you get introduced to the
the first movie, at least what IDB says, he was with ABBA. So you were in a movie just protecting ABBA.
Oh
yeah, that's right. I was in the ABBA movie, stretching.
Unofficial introduction to Hollywood.
Giving street of. I used to work the girls out every day on the beaches and swimming pools and in their room, so it'd say tough gig, right? But that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I ended up in the ABBA movie giving Frida some sketches on the roof of some hotel. But no, it was a great time. And, I worked with David Bowie for about 8 years, and that was a phenomenal time. What an incredible person he was to work with. I remember when I first met David, he challenged me to a one-arm push-up competition in a restaurant. That's pretty funny. But he was amazing to work with. The great thing that working with the acts that I've often said is that I feel fortunate I got to see the real people, meaning that, what the punters see is the manufactured, in a lot of cases, person on stage, the stage persona, whether it's David Bowie in the Ziggy Stardust days with all the makeup and everything. They became character. Even Mick Jagger, one day he did a press conference and he seemed to me to have this almost overboard, not Cockney, he wasn't Cockney, but very English sort of accent, and I said to him after, I said, you don't sound that strong to me. And he basically said to me, Rich, he said, it's amazing that after all these years, I do a gig with a reporter, a press conference, they still think they're going to trip us up with some question or whatever. And he said, what they realize is they want these characters. They want the bad boy to come out. And he said he basically would just bung on more of an accent, and carry on a little bit more. And, I realized that that's what I got to see in a lot of the artists, that they would give what the audience expected that character to be. Not all the time, there's a lot of real people like a James Taylor. James is as real as you can get. Linda Ronstadt, I worked with James and Linda for like 14 years, and you couldn't get more real individuals, as far as what you saw on stage and what you saw off stage. But that was fascinating to me, to see the real people and to see different things they did with their life and what they did that gave them longevity in their careers, meaning that they're ever ranging pursuit of excellence. They never stopped fiddling with the guitar or looking for new songs or flipping over a radio station to hear what was out there at that time. I often say, Linda, there was never a week Linda Ronstadt wasn't trying to find a new voice coach, how to hit a new note a little better. And that helped me a lot as a martial artist, because I realized that art is individual expression. How you symptomize art, it could be as a singer, it could be as a painter, it could be as a martial artist, but it's that striving for excellence and that never-ending quest to learn and to gain a knowledge base that just makes you sort of a better artist in whatever way that could be. And that's what it's always been. That's what I try and do to this day. I mean, nobody has a career as long as a James Taylor or Linda Ronstadt or a Mick Jagger without having some desire to be the best they can be. I've often said, and I want to say again, I saw a little podcast, Netflix on Keith Richards, about his life. And Keith's, what is he, 80 or something? And still, all I see is somebody that's so incredibly passionate about his music and about being the best writer, guitar player, songwriter he could be. And I think that's often missed by people that only tend to see the sex, drugs, and rock and roll aspect, and I loved seeing that. I love being around people like that. And by the way, they would also go to a Chuck Norris or a Jackie Chan or a Sammo Hung, bringing up names like that, or a Scott Adkins, that people miss the amount of work they put in to become what they are and be able to exhibit their art in the way they do. And I think that's incredible.
Going back to James Taylor, I found a picture online with both of you guys without your shirts on, and he looked like he was as ripped as you are. Was that from your training, or is he already ripped when you started with him?
No, that was from my training. James just took to it, man. I trained James just as hard as I train any black belt, and he loved it. And we would often stop. There's even some pictures I had where we stopped the tour bus at one stage and got him out and members of the band and went through a little bit of exercise and kind of karate-based stuff, and he loved it. I would set up a punching bag for James before he went on stage in the dressing rooms, and he'd work the bag a little bit. It was his way of getting rid of a little bit of anxiety and adrenaline, which a lot of the artists have, which again, people don't presume they would have, but a lot of them were still very anxious about being the best they could be. So the martial arts and training was a way to sort of balance all of that. And Rolling Stone magazine did an article on me once, in the 70s, because it got around that some of these artists were coming back off the road in better shape than when I went on, which is almost unheard of back there, due to the rigorous nature of touring, city after city and tour buses and on planes. But so many of them will work out virtually every day we could. And, it became a bit of a thing, which I feel very proud of. And James, as I said, particularly he even said to me one day, he said his addiction became exercise. He started riding his bike at home. I went to Martha's Vineyard for a while and stayed with him. And when he was married to Carly Simon, would run him through exercises and martial arts training. So, yeah, it's good. And again, it's just nice to be able to contribute in some small way, to that would benefit some of these people that are in a world that, as we all know, can be very destructive should you let it, by the very nature of the environment you're in.
I noticed also, like, you primarily did bodyguard work for musicians, but is it true that you also you were bodyguard for John Belushi too? Is that correct?
Yes, I was. And, that actually happened through working with Linda, because we were in New York and Linda was going to do a song on Saturday Night Live. And as per all the shows, which, by the way, Linda worked out as hard as James did. She was so into the exercise aspect, and I was giving Linda a few stretches in the dressing room, and John Belushi came in, and that's how I met John. And it's funny because he saw me working her out, and that was all it took for John, or for me to be the only one that John wanted, to go on tour and look after him. And that's, by the way, the way that sort of worked. When you didn't get a job as a bodyguard through sending in a resume, it was more through somebody of note, whether it's a Linda or a Mick Jagger or a David Bowie having you, that meant, oh, well, he must be okay, or they wouldn't be using him. So I started working with John, and that was when he was doing the Blues Brothers movie. So again, another highlight, because I got to meet Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles.
Oh,
and,
man.
Him and Danny Aykroyd to a lesser extent. But, I still give John workouts, each day. And basically I was a bodyguard, of course, but being on the Universal set and looking at John Landis do his thing, as director on the Blues Brothers, fantastic. I was supposed to do the actual Blues Brothers tour, but I was already working full-time with James and Linda and Fleetwood Mac, and I didn't have the time. And I said, look, John, I just can't do it. So I ended up introducing John to Bill Wallace. I knew Bill was from Memphis, and one of the band members from Memphis. I thought it'd be a good fit, and that worked out really well. That Bill ended up going on the road, with John during the Blues Brothers time. But fantastic time. John was just had a heart of gold. He was faith. Just fantastic to be around, and funny as, but also very extreme. I once said to him, he said, look, you on a suicide mission? Because when it came to eating, and, it's no secret, I wouldn't give away secrets, but drug use and everything was extreme. But that was just his personality, his character. He just lived life to the fullest. And it's sad that it ended the way it did. I think it was 32, 33 when he passed. And I actually went to John's funeral in Martha's Vineyard. James Taylor and I, James got a private jet, and we flew to Martha's Vineyard for the funeral. And I still have a vivid memory of being there. It was an open coffin funeral, and the church, very small church on Martha's Vineyard, was filled with people from Saturday Night Live and everything. And I remember looking at some of them outside the church still doing lines of coke and stuff, before going to the church. And I remember there was an Albanian Orthodox priest, which is, what I guess John's following was. But, there was a time when I was sitting there, and the minister was just giving us a very powerful speech, and he was talking about how somebody, like, he's looking at John in an open casket and saying how he never got to really see his talents come to total fruition and everything. And I remember he stopped, and it's like he looked at everybody individually in the church, and it was silent as everything. And he suddenly boomed, "Wise up." I said, "Ooh." Very, very powerful moment. He just said, "Wise up." And I do remember after saying to James, I said, I talked about what I was witnessing. I think, do you think anybody really learned something from that? And he said, "Well, hopefully, maybe, but life goes on and people just do what they do." But it was a very poignant moment for me to actually be at that funeral and again, be a part of that. And, to have worked with John and to see somebody like that, as I said, just lying in an open casket, you go, wow, that's one would wonder how many different life choices one should or could make, given the chance.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think you're talking about the Rolling Stone doing that piece on you, and then I've heard like everyone that talks about you online has nothing but great things to say. But I think you leave like a great impact on people. We went to a panel. And of course, we were like diehard fans. We've seen all China O'Brien. We've seen all your films many, many times. And we went to a panel of Karen Fukuhara, if you can remember her. Karen Fukuhara, she's
I
from
love
Boys.
Karen.
Karen from
Suicide
Fukuhara,
Squad.
Suicide
Yeah.
Squad, and the Boys. And she said, "Yeah, I love this, my trainer, and blah blah blah." And then she said, "His name is Richard Norton," and we were like, "Yes, we know him. We know who
Yeah, I
that is.
remember that. Yeah.
That is."
Yeah, but,
I think it was just. I thought she was like a little tidbit. I thought you'd like to know that she was just yeah. She just praised you so much to that. There's a room with a panel room full of I don't know how many 10,000 people or something like that.
Portland.
Thanks for passing that on. That's really nice. I mean, that's heartwarming when you hear that, because Karen was just a sweetheart, and again, worked so incredibly hard, with the sword work and everything for Suicide Squad. And as you know, I think she's up for an Emmy or something, with some show she's recently done. And
Yeah,
I love to see that, because she was a bit of a novice when she came into Suicide Squad, and to see somebody grow and blossom like that is fantastic. She was absolute sweetheart to work with.
yeah. I didn't recognize her the first few episodes that I saw her. I don't know if you watched The Boys, but I didn't. I thought she was incredible.
Yeah, I know. I haven't seen it myself, and I must have a look. But yeah, I hear she's fantastic.
Oh, I think I think you would be proud of her. I think you'd be really proud of her. Are you still in contact with the Ginger Rogers to your Fred Astaire, Miss Cynthia Rothrock? Are you guys still in touch?
Yeah, we always stay in touch. I mean, not like each week or anything like that, but we definitely stay in touch. As you know, Cynthia's a dear friend. We did, I don't know, 8 or 9 movies together over many years, and she was great. I think we gelled when we worked together. She's such an incredibly talented martial artist, to work with. And yeah, it was, the Ginger, that was a great little article I read where they referred to us as the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers of martial arts movies. I thought that's pretty cute, But yes, we still stay in touch. She's still doing seminars all over the place and still very active. I mean, the movie work becomes a little less just because of age, I think she and I both realize you're a product when you work on screen, and they would prefer to have the 30-year-olds running around kicking ass than us. I often laugh now that the roles I get now are probably as an aging gangster or somebody's grandfather.
Yeah, but even so, just to see you, that kind of leads me into what. Just got a couple more questions, but just leads me into the next one. I always think about if I won the lottery or if I had came across a big chunk of money, I would produce movies that I want to see. So, have you ever has there ever been talks of like a martial arts style type of Expendables with like the legends like yourself working alongside like the new school guys like Tony Jaa and like Stephen Chow? Stephen Chow is a little bit older, but still he's kind of younger than you guys. Like, has there ever been any talk something like that? Because that would be incredible, I think.
No, I agree, and there's definitely been chatter for many years now about a martial arts Expendables or a Magnificent Seven. I think it'd be a great idea. Would it appeal to the martial artists, the younger ones today? A lot of them don't necessarily know who Cynthia or myself or Don Wilson or Olivier Gruner. They don't necessarily know who we are. That's okay. I believe there'd be a lot of interest from that older style audience that would love to see us get on on camera. And I think it'd be a fun thing just to sort of to do something together like a Magnificent Seven. Will it happen? I don't know. Again, they've talked about it for years. I think it'd really work, especially if you put some of us older ones as more like mentors in a storyline that involved the younger hot guns of today. I think, that way you could appeal to an older and a younger demographic. And I don't know, I think that'd be great. I'm still look forward to still working a movie. There's a couple of movies I'm going to be involved in soon. And again, as long as they're roles that are really written with my age in mind, I certainly don't want to be trying to run around like a 30-year-old. First of all, I couldn't, and it would look ludicrous. But to play, something like, again, a role that Liam Neeson would play, I would love that, Or did you guys see My Name is Nobody? Did you see that film?
Yeah,
I've seen the trailer. I haven't watched it yet. Somebody might the watch list.
Fantastic. I mean, some of the action is just so well done. And, he's an older gentleman and, it's written with that in mind. Usually you're a father whose daughter, look at Taken with Liam, you give a license to somebody that's either retired or whatever. I'd love to do a role like that because I still train hard. I can still, especially close quarter sort of combat stuff, I believe I could still do really well on screen. I was never one for the Scott Adkins type or Michael J. White type of, jumping, spinning heel kicks. It was never my thing. I was more of a traditional Japanese stylist, But having said that, there's a lot of attributes I could bring into the reality-based combat part of choreography, and that would be exciting. And again, to go back to your question, I'd love to sort of get together with some of my old partners, and whether a retired married couple living in a quiet neighborhood and we're somehow brought back into action. Who knows? It'd be fun to do.
Or maybe a third Channel O'Brien. I know they did 2 Channel O'Briens. Maybe a third one.
Yeah, well, Cynthia sent me a text a number of times saying she had somebody who was interested in producing a third one. Again, I haven't heard anything. It's a tough business these days to get something up and made, and I understand that. Look, if it happens, it'll be wonderful, and maybe it'll be a nice swan song. But look, I'm just fortunate to still be in the industry. As you know, I'm working probably more predominantly as a fight director or fight coordinator now. The Liam Neeson film, did the last, Ghost in the Shell, done the Suicide Squad. I'm excited about coming out in a few weeks. We worked on that in Atlanta and Panama, and that's going to be exciting, getting together again with Margot Robbie and, actors like that, Idris Elba, fantastic cast. We had a lot of fun. I think it's going to be an amazing movie. But anyway, that's the sort of work I'm doing now, and I'm okay with that. Though, having said that, I would still love to be in front of the camera a little more. I think, again, with my age and experience and knowledge now, I could do a far better job than I would have back in the 80s and 90s, and bring something a little better to the screen. But we'll see.
I think you don't give yourself enough credit, so because you're saying you could have done better than you now than when you did it back in the 80s and stuff. I don't think you give yourself enough credit, because to my understanding, is this true that you were possibly considered as to be Riggs in Lethal Weapon? Was that true?
If it was, I hadn't heard it. So, I mean, how good would that have been? No, I didn't.
That would have been amazing. I think that would have been incredible. I think.
Yeah, of course.
That would have been
You're way
incredible.
taller than Mel, so you would have been perfect height for Danny Glover.
Yeah, you and Danny, you would have been like side by side,
Would have made Mel look like an amateur. No, I'm kidding.
No, and then it might have led to a major scene with you and Jet Li in part 4,
Yeah. Or even Gary Busey's part. I mean, no disrespect to Gary, he did a good job, but it would have been awesome. You imagine Richard and Mel fighting together at the end scene.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, no, all of that. I often look back and I've been asked that question: would have been better or good to have got involved in more A-grade movies? First of all, who knows whether I would have even got the opportunity? But my acting teacher once said to me back in the 80s, oh, Richard, you need to say no to some of these films, in the Philippines and Thailand. And I thought about it. I said, no. I said, my passion in life, and still is to be the best martial artist I could be. And film for me was really just a way to make a bit of cash, to be able to spend more time training with some of the best that I had the opportunity to train with. So I realized that it wasn't enough of a passion for me. If it was, I would have spent as much time in acting classes as I did in the martial arts dojos of the world. But I also think, you know what, I still had such an amazing time doing those, what we would call B-grade movies, the journey, the people I met, and the fact that all of those were as a result of me just wanting to be a martial artist and be the best martial artist you could be. So I look back and think, you know, you can't ask for more than that. Yes, you can always look back in hindsight and go, oh, maybe if I had have held out, maybe I would never have worked again. I mean, that could also be a reality, you know. But yes, to have an opportunity, some of those bigger movies would have been good. But I'm still incredibly happy with the opportunities I've had. So, and you know, at 71, to still be in the industry, still working, going to be working, albeit I don't know how much, on the next Mad Max movie that we'll shoot next year.
Oh, nice.
And you know, and just finished Suicide Squad, Triple Frontier. I mean, just to still be working in the industry, I mean, how blessed am I, you know? So I've got a lot to be thankful for.
So, what would you say? It doesn't have to be like, you know, movie wise. What would you say would be like your proudest moment as a martial artist in your entire career?
God, that's a difficult question. Why'd you ask me that? um, Proudest moment as a martial artist. No, that's a hard one to answer. Look, some of it may be that as an Aussie, that I was really one of the first to actually go overseas and be able to put Aussies on the screen in the martial arts sense. To be able to, like you pointed out, to be actually over in 1979 doing a movie as the main antagonist to a legend like Chuck Norris. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. And that got a lot of attention here in Australia. And I'm proud of that in the sense that I often say that if a skinny little asthmatic kid from Croydon, a suburb of Melbourne, can end up going overseas working with Chuck Norris, Jackie Chan, and Sammo Hung, then basically anybody is capable of it. It just gets down to how badly do you want it, you know? And so they're very proud moments, you know? And the other proud moments for me is still the friendships I formed, the fact that I'd still got such a close friendship with Jackie. Chuck and I are still friends after, 40-something years. We're still close, still always in contact. Chuck was the best man at my wedding, you know, to my wife, Judy. You know, and to forge those friendships, which really came out of a baseline of martial artists, of being martial artists, I feel very proud of that. And I feel proud of the direction my life took in just really wanting martial arts to be the main focus of my life. I've often said that all I wanted was that. Everything good in my life as a byproduct, like movies, like Bodyguard, work, traveling the world, came as a result of martial arts. And I think, how good is that, you know? It's not many people can say that they're still living and making a living off and still enjoying what's been their life passion, you know, since they were 10 years of age.
Yeah, well, us here at Mad Bros, we're very proud of you too. We're proud of your career. Like after all this you just told us all about. I mean, we were already giant fans of your career, but just learning new nuggets, new little side timelines of what happened throughout your life. It's really proud, and you stay grounded. You're really humble about it. So that's really a good quality to have.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And look, I'm just trying to be realistic, as I keep saying, you know, I don't want to compare myself with anybody, you know, because there is a million people that are better than I am. That doesn't mean, again, that I wouldn't take the opportunity, nor would anybody else refuse the opportunity I was given. And again, you just do the best you can do. And that's all I try and do. They often say with martial arts, the real battle is within yourself, you know. It's how can I just be a little better each day. And I'm just trying as a martial artist. I often say I don't want to be the same martial artist I was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You know, I need to keep evolving. You know, I need to keep adding to my knowledge, my skill set. And even if that means not necessarily being able to demonstrate it ultimately myself, but I can certainly help pass on that knowledge to younger students and help to make them the best that they can be. And that's really what it is. And I'm still healthy. You know, we're talking about all of that earlier, you know, and just to reiterate, the message I'm trying to give to a lot of the younger ones is, first of all, my job is to let you know a lot of things you shouldn't do that I did as a younger martial artist that I now realize were not good for my health, whether it's ballistic stretching or whatever it might be, or excessive sparring or grappling, you know, and having survival matches every day. I say, look, that's all very well for your ego on that particular day, but come and see me in 5 years and let me know how that's working out for you. I think it's absolutely about longevity and being able to be 70, 80, or even 90 and still enjoying your arts to the best of your ability. And, you know, as I said, I work hard on it. I say hard, but like I said to you guys earlier, and just to repeat, I don't think it's excessive what I do. Wim Hof breathing, still do that every morning, you know, 4 rounds of 30, 40, 50 breath retention, trying to hold, still have cold showers every day after a warm one, just as a matter of introducing controlled stresses on the body to help you with your fight or flight response when you get in a stressful situation. Still fasting, you know, 16-8 pretty much, eating over an 8-hour period and fasting for 16. Not every day, but most days. Following a reasonably close to a vegan diet, albeit I still do eat fish occasionally, but my wife is vegan. So, you know, just trying to and working out as much as possible. Some days it's that much and some days it's a lot, depending on how I feel, but I believe in just being consistent every day, especially on the days that you don't feel like doing anything. I think that's where the discipline comes in, to at least do something, and that's always given me good returns. So that's my message, you know, just do something that will contribute to your health and well-being as you get older, because, you know, there's an old saying that rich people have 5 things they want to do. They want to buy that house, they want that car, they want to travel here. Sick people usually have one thing they want, and that's just to get well.
Better,
you know, it's only when the universe taps you on the jaw and eventually cracks you over the head through something you've been doing, whether it's eating habits or training or the way you live, and gives you a big wake-up call, and people end up in intensive care or whatever, and all they wish for is health. Because you can have all the money in the world, if you can't walk 5Ks or walk up a hillside or go to a park, enjoy whatever's out there in nature, then what the hell's it all worth, you know? So that's all.
Mr. Norton, it's been a great honor and a privilege, and I appreciate all coming all the way from Australia to be with us. It's been I mean, I just can't believe it. It's just like your whole career that you've accomplished, and you still have the time to come sit down with us. It's really a great honor. So I just want to say that. And yeah, and Patrick, do you want to say anything else before we close out?
Yeah, I'm excited to see Millionaires Express. It's finally coming on Blu-ray. I've only seen clips and bits and pieces on YouTube or here and there. But now it's coming on Blu-ray. So I'm excited to see that. I'm hoping the China O'Brien comes on Blu-ray too. I first saw it when I was younger, late at night. You know, I couldn't sleep. I had the cable on. And, you know, usually cable late night has like naughty movies, but I was watching, hey, what's this? Cynthia Rothrock, because I had seen her in a previous movie, and then it's like, oh wow, then I got hooked. So
I think Millionaires Express was the first time I worked with Cynthia. We shot a certain amount of stuff in Hong Kong, but a certain amount also in Thailand. And I was asked, I got contacted by somebody in Hong Kong to do a making of for the Blu-ray of Millionaires. Because of COVID, for whatever reason, it became too difficult to get done, but that would have been fun to sort of give a bit of commentary on the making of Millionaires.
I know that she did, so I think she's the only one who did a commentary on it.
Right, good stuff. Yeah, no, I look forward to seeing. As I said, I don't often look back at those movies, but when I do, it puts a smile on your face. You know, you get to relive some of that. It was a good
I'm hoping
time.
Netflix will bring more of those movies though. I mean, they have the new martial arts, but they need to bring the classic. They need to bring Richard Norton, Cynthia Rothrock, Sammo Hung, Jack, all the classic, martial art films. Because it's like we never seen them all because they're not released and you can't find them online. So
no, I know that's
unless it's a bootleg.
Yeah, right. But thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. You know, it's great chatting to you.
Yeah.
And
It was
as I said,
great
do it
chatting with
again.
you. It was an honor. Wow.
Once we've got a couple more movies under the belt, we can do another catch up and talk about.
Oh,
some
that would be
that'd be
amazing.
great.
Yeah, that'd be totally great. And then if by chance you're ever in Washington, maybe we can do it in person or
Yeah.
something like that or something. Maybe we can show you around town, show you around.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been to Washington before, show you around Seattle, see the
Yeah.
Space Needle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've spent time in Washington. Usually, though, with the bands, you know, I've been to just about every city in the US. But people often ask me about it. I said I couldn't tell you. I could tell you what the hotel was like in the arena or the gig, because usually it's you just go to sound check, you do a gig, you get in a tour bus, and you're off to another place. You know, but yeah, no. So I've been to most of those places, but not as much as I'd like to. In other words, not enough time to actually get around and see the place. But there you go.
Thanks again, Mr. Richard Norton. And this has been
right.
David with Mad Bros Media.
It was. Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.